David, away you go.
All good. Hi, everyone. I think we're all waiting for people to join the webinar, but we'll just give people a few minutes.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We really appreciate your time. I'll first begin just by doing an acknowledgement to the country. So we acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Island Strait peoples as the traditional landowners of our land, Australia. The Gadigal and the Iwara Nation are the traditional custodians of the land in which the call is taking place from Sydney. So welcome and thank you for that. Welcome to WorksFest. I'm glad you could join us. I'm David Bowker. I'm the client lead for education within CloudWorks, and I'll be your host today. For those of you new to CloudWorks, I'll take a moment to introduce us and the work that we do. So we transform how businesses use Salesforce, leveraging the breadth of the platform, as well as cutting edge data analytics and AI technology. Our work extends beyond just implementation and boosting efficiency. We also ensure the effective use of customer data and AI across the entire organization of our clients, which becomes a powerful catalyst for significant growth and innovation. We made a recent acquisition of Lightfold, the leading customer data company, and our deep-rooted expertise in Salesforce. We are uniquely equipped to help our education clients adopt to this change and ensure they remain relevant, competitive, and get the most out of the platform. This is the first day of WorksFest. You'll hear a whole range of sessions over the week, which are right across the breadth of the platform, including data and AI, a range of customer stories, really looking at innovative ways that the platform can be used. So without further ado, I'll introduce the team on the call today. So firstly, Graham, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, folks, my name's Graham, nickname G. I'm just happy to be here. Now, this is going to be a great session. I'm looking forward to talking with you all about how we can use AI in the higher ed space. And look, I'll throw over to you, Chris.
Sure. And hey, everyone, Chris Bullock, Salesforce Certified Technical Architect. I'm also the CTO of CloudWorks. Been in this ecosystem a long time. Yeah, the last, I guess, kind of year or so, a big part of my focus has been what we're calling Salesforce 3.0, which we'll have a slide where I'll kind of talk to that, but it's essentially the bringing together of some very, very cool capabilities that we think is creating a transformational leap within the ecosystem and kind of what that means for people using Salesforce. So yeah, good to be here. Nice to meet you.
It's amazing, actually, that idea of Salesforce 3.0. None of us are particularly interested in the hype machine. So yeah, if we're talking about it that way, we actually really believe it.
Yeah, no marketing slides. This is genuinely our opinion and our genuine excitement for what is available on the platform now.
Awesome. So I've gone through the overview of the sessions, but just for, again, some quick context, we've got a whole range of different presentations going on this week across data and AI, a few different clients of ours who are talking about their projects and their transformations. And all of this will be available to those people who joined today in recordings as well, if you can make the sessions or if you can't. Great. Okay, so the reason we're here today really is to talk about AI and data and really getting started for education institutions, namely universities. So over the past 5 years, lots of universities in Australia have invested heavily in the Salesforce platform. You know, that could be universities who've gone down the route of a couple of different use cases, i.e., you know, for say recruitment, right through to a university who's invested in Salesforce across their entire student and constituent journey. So there's reasons that these organizations have done this, and generally, if you were to kind of summarize them, they'd probably fall into these buckets. One was doing these programs around student experience to create a differentiated student and constituent experience. 2, consolidating data and all engagement activities into a single place or a single platform. 3, driving operational excellence for the uni across really core processes. And then 4, delivering a modernized platform approach to technology. So what we're here today to talk about is really how we see AI, data, and CRM, and what we're referring to as Salesforce 3.0, really accelerate those objectives, and what we see as a step change in this technology being introduced, and how we see universities getting an even greater ROI on their current Salesforce investment. So what we'll do today, I'll pass to Chris firstly, and we'll talk about what the Salesforce landscape is and what we're referring to as Salesforce 3.0. Then we'll talk to some indicative use cases, exploring a hypothetical customer flow about how we see these capabilities being introduced. And then we'll pass to Graham, who'll talk about how to get started, what you need to do in terms of your foundation, what you need to do in terms of setting up for success, how to define use cases, and then how to start scaling and pocking out and developing MVP use cases of Salesforce. Over to you, Chris.
Right, good stuff. So Salesforce 3.0, it's a pretty big claim. It's a pretty bold claim. And you know, the reason why we think this is a really genuine step change from, say, 2.0, which is, you know, what people are kind of used to seeing as Salesforce today, versus this 3.0, is because there is a genuine revolution and coming together of a few key technologies that together are really providing a huge leap forward in what it means to be a Salesforce user, for what it means to be productive, to be a creative. Like, this is very different. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 12 years, and I've never seen anything come even this close. And I think, you know, generative AI is obviously a kind of key component to that. You know, I think most of us had a bit of an awakening 2 years ago when OpenAI released ChatGPT to the market. And if you were like me and were quick to play around with it, you know, you would have been amazed and surprised by actually how far AI had been progressing behind the scenes without us even knowing it. Like, many of us have like a Google Assistant or an Amazon Alexa assistant, and we kind of got used to that being like the cutting edge. And then OpenAI come and release ChatGPT, and they showed us, oh no, we are way, way, way further than that, right? Generative AI, very exciting. We're going to be talking about how that's available in the Salesforce platform. It's made a lot more powerful by several innovations that have happened around kind of modern data platforms. So also, you know, a trend that you might have seen in the last 5 years or so is this notion of a modern data platform. And there's a few key kind of features or capabilities that come together to differentiate a modern data platform from just a traditional kind of data warehouse. There's been a big uprising here with kind of key players like Snowflake and Databricks kind of being the key too, and really completely challenging what it means to be a data platform. You know, providing a platform that is built to be very effective at consolidating data across an enterprise, not just structured, but also unstructured data. The ability to do things like real-time data processing. You know, so rather than just something where you have you know, a series of kind of step instructions that happen on a schedule, which is kind of more traditional. You have that, you know, processing happening live, and that processing, the outputs of it actually kind of powering enterprises. And obviously, you know, infrastructure that is hugely scalable, performant, but also very cost effective. The third group is really about security and governance. I have a separate slide. I don't think we're actually going to talk about it today, but, you know, in the realm of generative AI, where you're now exposing your data and potentially kind of capability to users through that generative AI, it's more important than ever that you have the right kind of security architecture to make sure that those users and that generative AI can only, I guess, you know, do its work within the confines that you feel comfortable with. So essentially,
there's such a huge
groups.
thing there. Chris,
Go
I was
ahead,
just
go
going to
ahead.
jump in and just say, because I'd love your opinion on something in particular, something that we've seen that some organizations actually really struggle with is being able to fulfill their obligations in terms of right to be forgotten. That's a
Yep.
huge thing, isn't it?
No, absolutely massive. And what we're going to talk about are some technologies that, in that particular example, make that a lot more achievable, right? So 3 key technology groups. We're going to be talking about and demonstrating how all of this is now available on Salesforce, and probably to a degree of sophistication that that most people on this call might not really, comprehend. All right, so what is Salesforce 3.0 when you're kind of looking at it from kind of a more traditional architecture point of view? It's 3 layers. At the top, you have CRM. This is what people are, typically used to associating with Salesforce. You've got your apps and you've got your workflow. Typical apps being sales, service, marketing, commerce, but also things like education cloud, like industry specific, applications. Now, underlying that, Salesforce has had a number of predictive AI capabilities for a number of years now. But in the last kind of 6 to 12 months, there's been a huge investment and actual release of very powerful generative AI capabilities that we're going to be talking to. In the middle, you have your AI, or kind of what Salesforce is calling the Einstein 1 platform layer. Now, this is really that AI and cognition layer. And there's a number of components to this. You have the top layer, which is Einstein 1 Studio. And what this is the key capabilities and technologies that you have access to that allow you to actually have a good amount of control into the capabilities and the actual outputs that are created as part of your generative AI that you have access to through Salesforce. You have your Einstein trust layer, which is absolutely crucial, which is what are the capabilities and technologies today that ensure that when you're using these generative AI capabilities, that it's secure, it's reliant, and reliable, and it's compliant with your standards. And then below, you also have model agility, and this is huge and something that I got very excited about, which is Salesforce have taken a stance here that they want to offer this capability and they want to make it available for their users, but they also want to give you that agility. They want you to be able to pick your own LLM provider. So obviously, OpenAI is the biggest, and GPT is incredibly powerful and impressive, but they didn't want to hitch themselves to a particular single LLM provider. So what they've given you is actually a gateway and the ability to very easily change over to whatever supported model you would like. And I thought that was cool, very, 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 very interesting. And then they also have extended this to also predictive AI modeling. So yes, Salesforce has their own predictive AI. That's kind of what is confined within Model Builder within Einstein Studio. But they've also very intentionally been open in this instance as well. And so if you're a Databricks customer, if you're built into the Google or Amazon or Azure ecosystem, well, it's going to support those models as well. Finally, at the bottom, you have your data. So this is, Salesforce's modern data platform. They have Data Cloud, very powerful. We've seen huge amounts of innovations, specifically with Data Cloud in just the last 6 months. What this is really giving you is it's allowing you as a CRM user to tap into all of your enterprise data. So no longer are you confined to CRM, or are you restricted to, say, analytics or dependent on integration in order to provide that customer 360? You now, through Data Cloud, have a very powerful platform that allows you to very efficiently connect into your existing data estate, either through existing kind of storage providers, and they have support for all the main ones, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, amongst others. But they even have the ability for you to bring your own data lake. And so now GA live, they have Snowflake. And I think Google BigQuery is another one, which is also currently live. But on their roadmap, and from what we hear, it's all this year. It's anticipated that it doesn't matter if you're going to be an Amazon customer or an IBM customer or a Microsoft Azure customer. If you have a data warehouse, you're going to get to benefit from zero copy data sharing, which is huge. Right? If you've made that investment in that infrastructure, you've already organized your data, you have that available. It has never been easier in order to be able to make that data available through Data Cloud to Salesforce in order to either benefit from that generative AI or to power some of that kind of predictive AI capabilities that Salesforce is providing. Cool. Now exactly kind of how much generative AI is there? There is a lot more than you
So
probably
much.
realize. So this slide is just looking at a subset of what is available now. So we're not talking about roadmap. There's a few features here which are coming just around the corner. So I thought, okay, it's probably safe enough to put that down there, right? Because it's already gone through pilot, it's gone through beta, it's predicted to release, either in the next release or very, very shortly after. But there's already a huge wealth of very powerful generative AI capabilities on the Salesforce platform. Now, if I just kind of pick a few examples here, you've got things like generative emails, both for Sales Cloud and Service Cloud. So, if you're a sales user and you want to be able to draft a meeting request, or, just some other, common email as part of your workflow, it now has the ability to draft that very effectively for you, to really speed up the process of doing so, whilst also ensuring that the way it's doing it is grounded in your data, which is a really crucial part. There's this technology called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation Generative AI, which I think we're going to get to. Salesforce has this. It's really key. It's a real big differentiator between just kind of using GPT versus using Einstein Copilot. What this means is when you're calling that LLM, that large language model, and it's generating content for you, before it actually finishes generating and passing it back to you, one of the final things it does is it grounds that response within your actual CRM data. And that's huge. It just means it's going to be much more accurate, much more reliable, and at the end of the day, a lot more personal, when you're generating an email. It's
One
got things
thing,
like, also, G, did you
I
want to
was
jump
going to
in?
jump in there and say, yeah, in the higher education space, something that can be immensely powerful then to give you an example of how that grounded RAG can be helpful to you. If you have, for example, a ton of history of applications that students have made to join various faculties or various particular courses, and you know from those applications in the past, the kind of applications that are related to students that are going to be successful, you could ask your LLM, you could ask your GPT, hey, out of all of these applications we've been submitted, which ones look like they belong to students who are going to be very successful, and which ones look like they belong to students who might need more help. And
Nice.
that's something that you can do with that retrieval augmented generation, which is something that if you just had the stock standard off the shelf LLM response, it'd do its best, but it wouldn't be able to give you a response that is contextualized to your students, to your student applications.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. And that's a really good point, right? Like, which is embedded within that generative AI. There's levels of predictive AI as well, right? And so never has it been easier to benefit from predictive AI as it is now, when you can basically do it as part of a conversation.
Mm.
So there's multiple layers that we just talked about. There's obviously the whole model layer, which we've got separate presentations on. The one we're going to be really focusing on today is Data Cloud, and why this is so crucial and different from other providers that you might have seen. So Data Cloud, the key difference here, versus kind of other data lakehouse architectures, is the whole focus of Data Cloud and Salesforce is really about the system of work. And how can we bring together data in such a way, and how can we do intelligent things with that data in a way that's actually going to make a meaningful difference to people who are using Salesforce as a sales, service, marketing, commerce, or any kind of other user. And that's the big differentiator that we see here compared to other providers who are kind of just like pure lakehouse providers. And we're very pro lakehouse. So, G and his team have been working with lakehouse architectures through Snowflake for many, many years now, which is why we also think that we are a very credible partner to be able to do similar work on Data Cloud. But the fact that it's really focused on that activation is so key. I'm just going to talk very quickly about this diagram and some of the key components, just to articulate what is Data Cloud, and what are the key capabilities in what it does. So I'm going to go bottom up. Bottom up is that connectivity layer. So one of the really powerful things about Data Cloud is its rich ecosystem of connectors for all of the major technology providers. So if you're invested in Google or Amazon or Azure, they basically have you covered. And there's a whole bunch of other connectors which are currently in beta for other technologies such as Oracle, SAP. I mean, essentially, they're going after the entire market, which is just so great, to have that kind of open ecosystem. So if you have Amazon, for example, and you have Amazon Kinesis, or you have, Redshift as a data lake, or if you're using S3 buckets to, store files, this is a connector for that. And it's going to make it extremely easy to ingest that data, or in the case of a data lake, have zero copy data sharing to be able to access that data as if it was in Data Cloud without actually having to replicate it is so very powerful. As part of that ingestion layer as well, they also have streaming APIs. So if for whatever reason, you don't have a connector, there's multiple APIs that you can use to ingest that data, either through kind of batch or real-time or real-time streaming of that particular data. There's obviously a storage layer, and there's a few key components of this. So the first one I want to highlight is that Data Cloud has, and as part of this is on the roadmap, is going to have the capability of storing both structured and unstructured data. Now, structured data is it's a given. It's typically how you'd store data in Salesforce or any other database. You've got tables and rows. The real key difference is unstructured data. And this is one of the big differences between, say, like a lakehouse or data lake versus a data warehouse. The whole point of a lake and how it arose was, and how it differentiated itself, it had the ability for the first time ever to store unstructured data. So what is unstructured data? It's your Excel files, it's your video files, it's audio, it's PDFs, it's all of the stuff that has a lot of very valuable data in it, but isn't already organized as structured data that you would typically use to store in a database. Why this is so powerful? Well, if you're a contact center, or if you have a contact center, or if you're just any organization that has a lot of organizational knowledge in video, in PDFs, in audio, you can put that in Data Cloud very easily, and then you can start to benefit from that through the generative AI capabilities, or through semantic search, or for several other capabilities. Essentially, once it's in Data Cloud extracts out meaning and makes it available to query and for intelligence. And that's a huge game changer.
In the past, Chris, if you had a whole bunch of, say, PDFs, how would it have been done in the past to try and extract information from that?
Yes.
Which is why it's so much easier now.
Good. Look, great question. So historically, if you wanted to make that information useful in any way to your users in Salesforce, what you would have to do is you would have to convert those into knowledge articles. You'd have to set up a knowledge base, and you'd have to kind of painstakingly go through all of that knowledge, and you would have to create knowledge records. Now, this isn't the bad approach. Like it makes that data very easy to access within Salesforce. But the downside of it is, well, I mean, you have to go through that process. And obviously, knowledge is something that is organically growing all the time. It becomes something that needs to be governed. It needs to be something that you're doing continuously to make sure that your people who are actually using this are doing so effectively. The ability to just drop it into Data Cloud and for that to be instant knowledge and how much easier that is, I think is a real game changer.
It's amazing too, because once you realize that the generative AI that's looking at that information is able to be meta about it, you could say, what new information has been added in the last, few months? Can you summarize that for me? And then you could even ask it beyond that. Can you summarize what effect that new information may have on your responses? It's crazy what's possible.
Absolutely. And we're all I think the whole ecosystem is still kind of waking up to the possibilities, because this technology is so creative, it's so applicable to practically anything, right?
Amazing.
I'm going to speed up because I think we have a lot more slides to cover, but beyond storage, a very kind of key point is, like any other lakehouse or lakehouse architecture, you obviously have the ability to transform that data. A crucial component is identity resolution. So Salesforce have a very, very, very powerful capability to identify and unify profiles. And this isn't just customer profiles, but this is profiles in other ways. And why that's powerful is it's one of the biggest challenges that any large organization, or large or small, have had for a very long time now, which is duplicate data. They've got all this data coming from various different channels. It's never been so large, in volume as it has been today. It's crucial for you to be able to unify that into harmonized profiles in order to actually activate that, appropriately. Salesforce has a very powerful configuration-based identity resolution solution, which is very cool. Finally, what the real key though, so obviously you've got this great ecosystem, you can ingest data, you can store it unstructured and structured, you can transform it, you can unify it so you don't have that duplicates, you have that unified profile. The key is about activating that data because it's part of that Salesforce ecosystem. And because it's kind of what Salesforce are most focused on, it makes it extremely easy to activate this. And by activate, I mean kind of make it useful in some way to those users. Now, this just could be as simple as an enhanced customer 360. Any data cloud is instantly available, very easy, accessible within Salesforce. But it can also then be tapped into by the grounded, RAG-based generative AI capabilities of Salesforce. It can do things which are kind of more specific to certain applications. Like it's got a whole bunch of marketing-based capabilities like dynamic segment creation. It can be used for the predictive AI modeling, and it can do a whole bunch of other stuff. So yeah, just so very impressive. Okay, that's great. Cool technology, but what does this actually mean, right? What does this actually mean to a very common process? We've got a few different variations of this. The one we're going to show today is all about traditional case resolution, specifically within universities. So I guess what this would normally look like is you've got multiple channels through which you can be interacting with your students. And this could be interacting, for all sorts of reasons. But essentially, what are all the ways that a student might want to reach out and you want to assist them, as part of your role, responsibility as a university. Now, any case resolution pathway basically looks exactly like this. You've got multiple channels, which are ways that you can, raise an inquiry, that you can reach out and connect. Ultimately, in Salesforce, it's captured as a case. That case needs to be assigned to a human in order to be worked on. Once it's assigned, there's a series of steps and kind of back and forth communications in order to appropriately resolve that case. Ideally, you're using Salesforce knowledge, if you have it organized in order to support that case workflow. Sometimes that case needs to be escalated. It could be a capacity issue. It could be a knowledge issue. Either way, Salesforce have got tools that allow you to identify when a case needs to be escalated, and they can get it to the right agent who can, most promptly resolve that case. And ultimately, it's resolved. Now, at the end of it, you might have an optional feedback loop. Feedback loops are great, very powerful. You want to be able to get feedback with the level of service you're providing. And outside of this, overarching it, you have various tools for service analytics. So being able to look at all of that data, both at aggregate and detail level in order to work out how are we doing, how can we improve. This is what most people today are doing on Salesforce. It looks like this.
Something I wanted to throw in just there is that we've got this and the next couple of slides, as Chris was saying, are very much focused on case resolution as a really good example of how AI and chatbots and what have you can help you. But I'd encourage you also to be thinking about it from the perspective of it could be anything. It could be student applications. It could be faculty communications to students about grades. It could be basically anything where a human is using Salesforce to communicate with someone or process something. You could largely use the same kind of thinking that Chris is talking about here to define that process and then to define how that process could be enhanced with AI.
Yep. Nice. Okay, cool. That's traditional. What is a modern gen case resolution? And when I'm using the word modern, I'm talking about what can you do today using the capabilities that are very easily available to you today through the Salesforce platform. The diagram largely looks the same. You're still having to do the same stages. The key difference is that every single stage is now AI assisted. So instead of being kind of that level of care being purely based on that person's experience and capacity, you now have through every step an AI agent or AI capability that's assisting you. So what does this look like? You're still going to have the same channels, but what you're going to see is they're going to predominantly, you're going to have a lot more of those become more AI assisted. So you might still have a chatbot, but now instead of a traditional chatbot, it's going to be more like a kind of GPT chatbot, a co-pilot chatbot, where you can have conversations. and they're going to be able to do a lot more things that was, traditionally possible through what you would normally think of as a chatbot. You're still going to capture a case in Salesforce, but Salesforce has some very good capabilities of classifying that case. Now, this is actually not that new, but it's very powerful. This has been out for a while now. Salesforce has the way through a means through predictive AI to predict some common and useful fields for a case. So what is the likely inquiry type or subtype? What is the priority of this inquiry? And the reason why that's so important is it helps the AI or just kind of general workflow to identify who's going to be the best person or group of people to work on this case without having to have a manager or someone else essentially triage every single case that comes through, which is probably not the best use of their time, especially if they're, a manager, like someone who's responsible for looking after a team of agents. Salesforce has the ability to route that to the most, I guess, kind of best suited agent based on a set of skills and capacity. But then when it actually gets to that person, this is when things really change. So now, through generative AI and some of these capabilities, you have the ability to do service replies or reply recommendations. Now, these capabilities are very similar. What they both mean is that you have generative AI suggesting to you responses. So this could be a response to an email. It could be a response to a live chat conversation you're having. This is very powerful because it's going to be using your data. And as an agent, if you're having to manage multiple ones, multiple of these in parallel, being able to have an answer or reply ready to go, and instead of crafting that every time, being able to just review it and modifying it before sending is a huge, huge, huge productivity saving.
And this would be where that retrieval augmented generation would be so powerful, because you'd be building up over time your set of, this is how we talk and this is how we respond. And so then the AI is just getting better and better at speaking the way you want it to.
That's a really great point. So another really cool thing about this technology is it learns by itself. You don't have to continuously feed it more data and train it. It's doing this all the time in the background. And so, yeah, based on the volumes of data that you're coming back and based on the feedback that you're getting a customer, it's going to evolve. It's going to train itself, and it's going to learn like what are the right kind of temperament and style of content that needs to generate in order to get the best results. You've got generative knowledge creation. So there's capabilities here that allow you to actually draft and very quickly generate new knowledge when you come across a particularly new or challenging case. And the real kind of key one here is you've got Copilot. Now, Copilot, that's your GPT essentially window, but the Salesforce version of it, which is Copilot, available to you always in the context of your work. So yes, you've got these great kind of turnkey solutions that are just there and available and will do things for you. But what Copilot allows you to do is extend that further and give you the ability actually to have a conversation with that AI. And so this is great if you come across something that you've never done before. There's a knowledge gap or an experience gap. You can use that Copilot, and that's going to suggest to you how you might want to progress that particular interaction using all of your enterprise data, all of your past service interactions. And so, the applications of that are just huge. You still might have escalation, but the chance of this now happening is much smaller. One, because you are able to classify and assign that to, the right person in the first instance. Probably there's less likelihood of needing to escalate, but also two, because that person now is so much more productive and has an assistant that allows them to bridge that experience and knowledge gap, the chance of them needing to escalate is also just far, far, far lower, which is going to be great for, all those kind of really crucial call center KPIs like first response time and case resolution time and all those sorts of things. At the end of the case, you've got tools like Einstein Case Wrap-Up that allows you to very effectively wrap up a case, ensure that before closing it, you've structured and summarized your data in a way that's going to benefit others, benefit analytics. You've got the ability through service replies and flow, which is just coming out, to actually automatically send out kind of crafted responses and crafted emails, so you can have more personal requests for feedback, which hopefully will increase the chance of actually getting that feedback. And then you have a whole heap of technologies which are about giving you deeper analytics. You've got service intelligence, which is available now, which just gives you a wealth of kind of different analytical capabilities for getting that kind of, big picture and deep view on what's going on. And then you have conversation mining, which is very exciting, which allows you to go really deep into individual conversations and conversations and an aggregate to assess, how are those conversations going? What are the sorts of things people are talking about? And really the crux of it is how might I improve, in both of those cases. So huge wealth of capabilities, all about assisted case resolution, which are available now.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, even looking at just even this, the very first box of case classification. I know out there in some organizations, especially in higher ed, where you've got maybe a dozen different faculties. Each of those faculties then has multiple subgroups. And then within those subgroups, you might have, I don't know, 20 different query types. So for somebody new joining the service team, answering a call, and then somebody saying, hey, I want to talk about this legal course, and I want to talk about, financial support, that person's going to be spending several minutes just trying to figure out what case category they should select out of the several hundred in their list. If that first bit can be automated and then jump directly to the people who have that knowledge already, you're already saving huge amounts of time and effort and multiplying the amount of students you could talk to without multiplying the number of staff you need in your service team.
Very powerful. So we talk about modern. Where's it going next? Now I've called this near gen. Like any technology, you're going to have people who are first movers, and then you're going to have people at different levels of the spectrum of kind of adopting that next wave of technology. The transition that we see is a gradual transition, and the speed and kind of depth of what this is, of where this is going to be picked up is going to depend on a whole number of factors, but it's a transition from assisted AI to autonomous AI. The AI is going to continue to get better and better and better to the point where you as an organization or as an individual are going to feel more and more comfortable having this AI assist you and take on some of that workflow. And so there are already cases and kind of rumors of companies, very large companies, investing millions of dollars, probably more than millions of dollars, really, rolling this out because the potential benefits are so huge. But Salesforce and is actually giving you and progressing, giving you capabilities that ultimately we believe is going to lead to this. Now, why this is a good thing? Call centers, particular, or service teams. Some of the kind of key challenges they have is they are very often understaffed. You've got a team of individuals hugely passionate about helping customers, always under the pump. They have to deal with, typically part of a component of their staff, sometimes 50% of their staff are part-time workers. Sometimes, people just get really hit hard by a virus that's going around, and that can massively impact your capacity, which in turn can massively impact your student experience. And so the ability to, over time, through analytics, through the AI, identify, well, what types of cases are actually, supported perfectly adequately. And I think in some cases, even better from a generative AI, kind of, an autonomous kind of AI capability. And you'll have a lever where, based on a number of factors, you'll be able to shift some of that workload to that autonomous agents, which ultimately, if done right, is going to be beneficial for all those involved. If done right, it's going to mean much kind of more personalized, much faster service for your students, whilst also supporting your workforce and allowing them to do a lot more of their kind of higher value work that they love doing out, in an environment where they have the capacity, right? They have the time and support in order to be able to do that more, valuable work.
It's really important that you mentioned those levers based on the analytics of what should be routed where, what should be assisted AI, which can help everybody, and what could be autonomous. Something that we've seen from talking to our friends and customers in public sector and in higher education as well, is really this idea that we never want an implemented generative AI or predictive model to expand our risk profile. So what do I mean? We always want anything we implement to reduce the amount of risk we're exposed to. What do I mean by that? We want our generative AI, as soon as that thing comes in and hits our case resolution or case routing, and it's got anything to do with maybe mental health or financial distress or any of the number of things that we could tell the AI to be looking for, anything like that, we want it to immediately route it to a human. We don't want there to be any chance that that's just going to fall into a black hole or get answered incorrectly. And that's the important part of what you can do with that lever, is control what are we willing to allow through to autonomous and what needs to be assisted with a human.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think it's a really kind of key differentiator of our go-to-market and our position on advising and implementing these solutions. Because we come from that deep data and analytics background, a crucial component of our solution is going to be building in the capabilities throughout the whole journey to be able to always have that pulse point, in order to be able to always identify, well, how is this going? What are the sorts of cases or inquiries that a bot could take on? How is that bot performing? Is it doing, better or worse than a human, right? It's just so crucial. Is it increasing or reducing our risk profile? So that's definitely something you get from our approach, CloudWorks. It's a real appreciation of the importance of data in order to have that feedback mechanism to work out how is this going? How can we make it better?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I might jump in here, Chris, if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
fantastic. So folks, the next few slides is really going to be talking about how we think that organizations can best get started with this. We have some big ideas ourselves about the best ways to implement various types of AI. Really, there's two main streams you could be thinking about. You've got the new cool hotness that everyone's talking about, which is generative AI, it's GPTs and large language models. And then you've got what has been reasonably solved technology for the last 20, 30 years, which is predictive modeling. A lot of what we're talking about today is focused on that generative AI side of things, because that is the space where best practice is still being defined. So we have some pretty big ideas on how we think that should work. We got some key principles here on the slide, and I've got my slides on my second screen. So if I'm jumping across like that, that's what I'm doing. But essentially, when you're getting generative AI up and running in your environment, you've got 4 key principles that we think are incredibly important. Whether you're working with us or self-implementing, these are incredibly important. You need to know what success looks like. A generative AI can do so many amazing things that you really need ahead of time to know what success is going to look like for you. For us, the way we would define it is looking at how do we either shorten a human-led process or even transfer to an autonomous process. And that's really what Chris was talking about between assisted processes and autonomous processes. User-centric innovation. Anything that gets delivered is effectively still needing to use the same thinking that we've been using for the last 15 years, which is that ultimately, it's end user led. We need to understand what end users do, what pain points they have, and what amazing things could be possible if they had certain levels of assistance. Or, like we were talking about before, we just simply run out of time when we have a limited number of people and huge amounts of things we need to solve. So let's start with the end user. What do they need? And then see how Gen AI is applying to that, rather than let's do Gen AI. What can we do with it? You do it the other way around. We always want to look that way. Starting at a manageable size. Obviously, we would love to come in and do everything with you all at once. I mean, we'd love to do that. Of course we would. But really, the better way to start is find a manageable use case. Find something where you've got the champions internally, the support internally, and the budget to be able to go after something. Now, that doesn't mean you have to think small. You can think big, but it needs to be a manageable big. So think a vertical slice rather than a big horizontal slice of rolling Gen AI across every single thing in your business. And then rapid results. No matter what, for generative AI to not fall into the same holes that predictive modeling have fallen into for the last 15, 20 years. It needs to be something that has a measurable result, has a manageable size, and is going to help your end users so that you can get rapid results. If you get rapid results and you have a huge a group of users saying this was fantastic, it was easy, it was great, it was exciting, that's what builds momentum in your organization to then find other cool use cases. So these are the big important principles there. At CloudWorks, we've got a bunch of thinking, I guess, across the entire gamut of organizational maturity. There's 4 major phases that basically every organization is going to go through when it comes to AI and generative AI. You've got your establishing foundation. That's where you're getting in place all of those rapid results. You're understanding what success looks like. You know who your key user groups are. Once you've got your foundation in place, and again, it can be a vertical slice, not a horizontal slice. But once you've got that foundation in place, that's when you can start looking at, well, what can we actually do with this? Let's see what, or rather, I should say, what else can we do with this? Because you'll have your initial use cases measured. From there, okay, we've seen that assisted AI is working. How else can we use it in the business? Let's talk to more user groups. Let's find out more ways to just roll out this already existing success. And importantly here, because of retrieval augmented generation, RAG, that concept of all of the LLM responses being grounded in your data, it's only going to get better and better and better because you're going to be giving it more and more context about your organization. Some really powerful things you can do there is that, say, for example, that you're looking at your university and you're going, okay, we know that our arts program is one of the best in the country. We actually rate it. We rate it really highly. Everything your arts program produces in terms of policies, student success, application gathering, that all will feed into your overall model that's being applied everywhere. And you can tell your LLM, your GPT, your retrieval augmented generation, really pay attention to what's coming out of the arts program because we value that hugely. So you can play around with saying what's more and more valuable and what maybe is less focused on. As you then get better and better, you'll roll it out to more and more places. And then finally, further on down the track, once you've got that organizational knowledge and that comfort with what the AI is doing, then we might start looking at truly autonomous AI, saying, yep, we're actually confident enough with what this thing's been generating that we're going to give it this subset of cases. We're going to give it this subset of application types to review, or whatever it is that's going to work best for you. We'll jump on in. But I guess before I go to the next slide, really, ultimately across all of it, and this is where we'll, obviously we would love to work with you, but what we suggest is really needed across all of it is having an advisory partner. You may need an advisory partner for just a small amount or maybe a large amount. That's all absolutely negotiable and we can figure that out. But having an advisory partner, we think is very, very valuable here. And I guess, why? Why is it valuable? One of the reasons why is that even simple generative AI has a lot of foundational activities. I won't get you to read everything on this slide right now. Obviously, check it out later and go through it at your leisure. This is really, though, our distillation of what we think virtually every organization, higher ed or not, would need to go through as part of that establishing a foundation. There's a ton here. It might be kind of daunting. And that's why I say it doesn't have to be a horizontal slice. It can be a vertical slice. Let's talk to one team about their AI needs, about their end user needs, about their strategy, and then we can work through this process. This is something that we are very, very good at CloudWorks. And this is where we'd love to help you to go through this. It's essentially the very first stumbling point. If this is done well, and if you're guided well through it, or if you've got a partner that you're trusting to work through this with you, you can set yourself up for amazing levels of success. If this is something that turns into a drawn out long thing, you'll lose that internal excitement. You'll lose that internal momentum, and it'll become something that drops off the radar. maybe that's okay. But we'd like to say that there's the amount of opportunity here for organizations. You don't want to be left behind in this space, I think. I mean, Chris, I'd actually love to ask your opinion on that, because this, again, I think that this is the crux of the matter. But I mean, you're a CTA. What do you think?
No, yeah, look, I think there's a pathway. I think there's a whole bunch of very important baseline kind of foundational activities that any organization wants to do. We're pretty flexible in our approach. Obviously, we have kind of views and kind of blueprints about how this is done, but we also have an appreciation that organizations are different, and we want to make sure that ultimately, for any of this to be valuable, it has to make meaningful impact and outputs. It has to create ROI for ideally both the organization and the individual users of the application.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about that end user value, isn't it? And the organization, of course, wants to then have rolled up value. And if the end users are using it, if adoption is happening, that's where you find.
That's normally what we find, right? And that's why we're so persona driven, user driven, is that we've just seen time and time again. If you measurably enhance the experience of the people using the applications, it basically reliably results in great business outcomes as well.
Absolutely. It really is the crux of it. When you're using, especially in the Salesforce landscape, you're using per user, per month licenses. You want to get every drop of adoption out of them that you can. One thing here, I want to take just a moment to kind of sidestep a little bit. My background is actually as a founder of Lightfold, a company that Cloudworks acquired around about 5-6 months ago. And we've been looking at this idea of, how do you use human-centered design for AI? How do you drive those things together? Our director of design and product, Kylie Willett, has been working on this methodology called Tesseract for probably longer than she'd like me to mention. So I'll jump through what we've got here on screen, though, and really, we won't spend much time on it. I know we're coming to the end of the call, but ultimately, when you're doing human-centered design, it's not a new idea that you care about the end user. We want to know who the people are. We also want to know actions. And actions in this case, we're really talking about their day-to-day job. Literally, what do they do every day? Often we'll have workshops where we talk to people about their day-to-day job, and they'll come at it saying, oh, well, I log into this system and I check these emails. And we say, that's great. I'm going to write that down because that's important. But literally, actually, what do you do all day? Oh, well, I sit at my desk and I answer these questions. Great. That's what we want to know. Because once we know the people and then what they do all day, we then track down what data does the organization actually have available to it. And of course, in this case, you're going to have a ton of information inside of Salesforce, but maybe you're going to have information in a dozen other places as well. Those are the places we want to connect and hook straight into Data Cloud so that we end up having all of that information in one place. Once we know the people, what they do all day and what's hard about it, and what would be great if they could get something achieved, what data you have or you could get access to, then you wrap it up in the application layer. And that's your generative AI, that's your predictive models, that's your dashboards, that's everything along those lines. We really did spend some time thinking about, how do you do that for AI? So when you're talking to perhaps non-technical users, but you still want to get to a technical outcome, we have these major 5 points. We work through with everybody. We say, if you had a crystal ball, what would you want to predict? And they come up with 100 different ideas. From there, we go, what's actually possible with today's currently technology? What's viable with the information that we have at hand? And then the critical point, and this is even more critical inside higher ed or inside public sector, is it ethical? Because you might be able to predict if a student is likely to encounter financial distress. We need to be 100% certain what data is heading into that model, because if a student ever asks, why did you reach out to me about financial distress? We need to know the answer of why we reached out. That's critical. From there, is it valuable? And then finally, feasible. And the feasibility is not technologically feasible, because we've covered that, but it's organizationally feasible. Is this something that we've got internal momentum to drive? I'll jump from there then. Just, I guess, a few offerings that we have. Basically, I guess, ways that we can work together. we've got something that we've been putting together, which is a pretty rapid AI readiness check, 2 to 4 weeks. It's around about $20,000. And we'll come in, we'll assess everything with you. We'll work back and forth to make sure you're ready for any kind of AI project coming up next. From there, then we've got some other things that we can do. If you are feeling like, actually, now we know we're ready to rock and roll. We know we've got our data in the right format. Let's actually do a bit of a larger piece, an AI advisory. Great. We're doing that with a couple of organizations now, particularly around data cloud and generative AI. It's something that's more bespoke, so it's not a rolled up offering, but it's something that we can absolutely talk to you about. You'd have people like myself, Chris, and the team helping you on really getting to the crux of what you could do next and how you'd achieve it. And then, of course, the what can spin off from that is then your POCs or your MVPs. And again, we can do them very rapidly. It all comes back to what we are talking about in those key principles. We need to know what's measurable so that we can understand if it's successful. We need to know who's going to be using it, and we need to understand how long it's going to take and then rapidly deliver it, because otherwise we'll lose momentum. But that's, I think, oh, we had a draft slide still in there. But that's, I think, everything from me. We've got, I think, only about 3 minutes left because I've spoken for so long, so I do apologize. But if there are any questions that people have, please feel free to throw them in there in chat. And if we don't get a chance to get to them today, well, obviously, we'd love to chat with you, I guess, asynchronously, email, have a meeting, whatever you'd like. But I might throw it back to you, David, if you want to take the lead.
Yeah, sure. I'll just go through the questions now. Hang on. Okay, the first one. If we're doing an AI POC, how do we measure the ROI on that?
That's a huge question. That's amazing. Well, that's exactly it. Is you actually need to get really, really specific about what you're wanting that generative AI or AI in general to solve for you. So, for example, what we would do is if we said the POC is giving assisted case resolution to our service team. Okay, cool. That's the example. What are our metrics? Right now, we are able to process 500 cases a day, and it takes us roughly 3 minutes per case. Our metric would be, well, the AI assisted needs to either, or well, it probably needs to do both, reduce the amount of time it takes you to respond to a case, and then necessarily increase the amount of cases you have per day. Return on investment, then, I guess, is number of extra cases divided by what you would have paid staff to handle that.
Yeah, but it could also be other things, like it could also be NPS, right? It could be satisfaction scores. It could be,
oh, yes,
right? Because ideally you're uplifting the experience, not just the speed at which you can do things.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're able to say at the end of a month of trialing a particular AI out, overall, we raised, 1 whole point in NPS, maybe going from 7 to an 8, finally getting that 8 that you want. That's obviously a huge thing that you can measure.
Great. Another question was, for AI projects on Salesforce, what skills do we need internally to invest in?
That's a good question.
Good question.
I've got an answer that I believe is true and applicable, which is that my true, honest belief on this is that in the next 5 years, and some organizations are already doing this, but in the next 5 years, organizations will have a chief AI officer. Everybody will have one, and they will have a team of people whose responsibility is governing AI across the entire organization. In the short term, in Salesforce, what you need is you'll need a Salesforce admin on staff who's up to speed on how generative AI is deployed. And then you'll need to have somebody who is both excited and interested and knowledgeable about existing processes and existing data. I think if you can invest in somebody or some people who know those things, that's a solid start. I mean, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I'd say that. And then, this could be an overlap. It could be an individual person. A crucial component is also the prompts themselves. So Salesforce has a tool called Prompt Builder. which essentially is your library of prompts, and it gives you a test bed called Copilot Builder, where you can basically give it sample inputs and then see what it generates. And so that way, that's where you can kind of test the sorts of things you know that people are using Copilot for or want to be using for. And that combined with your prompts allows you to essentially manage and tweak those prompts and those kind of other actions so that you're getting the best kind of responses that you want that really reflect, you know, your I guess your kind of values as an organization and the kind of the level of depth, you know, that you want to give in those sorts of responses. So having, you know, one or more people who are interested in kind of looking after that is going to be key. The really great thing though is these are declarative tools. They're very easy to get up and going with. You do need to have some understanding of prompt engineering, kind of what makes it a good prompt, but that's not hard. That's something you can get up to speed with very quickly.
Perfect. Obviously, we're now at time, but thank you for joining. So if you use this QR code here, you can see what other sessions we've got all this week. And there are some more questions that we've not answered, but I'll reach out to the people who've asked those, and we can get those covered off. But again, thank you so much. Really great to have you, and hopefully we can help in some way in the future. And yeah, have a great rest of your week.
Great. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.